On September 2nd, I left Bowman, North Dakota on a foggy morning. I was heading south on Route 85, a nice stretch of road that took me over easy hills and into South Dakota. It was a short 50-mile ride to Buffalo, a distance I was grateful for, given the strong crosswinds. Once in town, I set to scouting out the area for food and a spot for the night. At a park at one end of town, I came across a large crowd. A couple at the entrance to the park told me that the town's Labor Day rodeo was underway. Hearing about my trip, they gave me a ticket in, and so I rolled into the park to check out the events. From bronc riding to goat tying, it was all pretty fun to watch. My favorite event was the steer wrestling. Rodeo completed, I pedaled to the edge of town, setting up for the night at the convenient roadside campground. I set out early for a long stretch on 85 South. The wind had turned in my favor more or less, so I made decent time. Aside from the traffic on the road, I had cows and the occasional antelope to keep me company as I rode along, cutting through South Dakota's prairie. I reached my destination at Belle, first checking out the geographic center of the nation marker before getting what I needed in town and turning in for the night. The next morning, I hopped onto Route 34 West and made the short 12-mile ride out to Snag, Wyoming. After cheesing it with a sign and riding a little ways for good measure, I turned around and headed back to Belle. From there, I continued along Route 34, angling southeast to the town of Sturgis, a small town nestled at the foot of the Black Hills. I initially had planned on saving the climb into the hills for the next day, but I decided to go a bit further with the idea of making tomorrow's ride a bit easier. So after a long rest in Sturgis, I set out for another 24 miles to the town of Nemo. I only needed a couple of miles to realize that I was in for a heck of a climb. The long, steep incline into the Black Hills was enough to put that ride firmly in the trip's top 3 most difficult rides. My legs weren't up for the challenge, and I had to stop several times and wait for my soul to catch up. But, bit by bit, I finally cleared the worst of it and made it to Nemo, grabbing supplies before riding a bit out of town to a small campground for the night. I left the campground, eager to check out Mount Rushmore and then roll out of the Black Hills. The roads leading to the monument had plenty of ups and downs, but nothing quite like the day before. I reached Keystone, the little touristy town at the foot of the short but steep climb up to Mount Rushmore. After taking a breather, I set out for the very slow 2-mile stretch. I found that while the Grand Canyon was majestic to see, it was somewhat shocking when I looked up and saw the giant faces carved into the mountain. The climb completed, I took in the sight from afar before turning around and heading back down. My previous top speed of 38 miles an hour back in Washington was passed as the Black Hills sent my bike speeding down at 44 miles an hour. And it would have been faster if I had let it. But safety first, of course. I had a good ride getting out of the hills, stopping for the day in Hermosa, South Dakota, renting a small cabin at a campground outside of town, settling in for a couple of nights indoors. After a relaxing day at the cabin, I left on the 7th, heading south. There was a strong wind out of the northwest that helped me out along the way. It was all fairly flat compared to the last few days, and so I enjoyed cruising along, crossing over into Nebraska and finishing the 85 miles in the town of Chadron. At the end of the week, I struck east once again, this time along Route 20. There were more hills than I was expecting, and a headwind all day long, resulting in a sluggish ride. I slowly put the 80 miles behind me, finishing up the week at the Cottonwood Lake Recreation Area outside of Merriman, Nebraska.